Why is her name in your phone logs at 2:47 a.m. last Thursday? That's the first thing that shattered the quiet Sunday morning I thought we were sharing. My voice was low, controlled, but inside, I felt my chest twisting like I'd swallowed glass. He froze, the fork halfway to his mouth, eyes darting, and then he looked away. Typical. Avoiding the truth had always been his method of survival. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I'm 29, a graphic designer in Seattle, and I'd been with Marcus for 7 years. We had an apartment that smelled faintly of his cologne and our cats, a life that looked perfect from the outside, even if we'd been living more like roommates than lovers for the past 2 years. I noticed the small things first. The late nights at work, the guarded phone calls, the way he'd flinch when I asked about his friends. But I told myself, maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was imagining it all. But seeing her name, exactly time-stamped, in the detailed log of calls he thought I'd never check, it hit me harder than any suspicion ever could. The betrayal wasn't a vague feeling anymore. It was there, black and white, glaring back at me from my screen. "Marcus," I said, voice sharper now. "Don't tell me it's nothing." He swallowed. It's in the past. It doesn't mean anything now." The words sounded hollow even as he spoke them. And yet, in that moment, I caught myself hesitating. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me still loved him. 7 years doesn't just vanish overnight. We'd built routines, habits, even little rituals that only we knew, the way he made me coffee on Sundays, the way we watched old movies curled up on the couch, the lazy arguments about which sushi place was better. Could all of that be real, if he was lying to me? I decided to trace the logs further. I didn't know if I wanted to see it, but I needed to know. That's when I found it, the text threads. Hundreds of messages, some polite, some flirtatious, some so intimate I felt my stomach churn just reading them. And the worst part? It hadn't been in the past at all. It was happening last week, while he told me he was working late. I felt numb at first, like my mind was a screen buffering, unable to process the data streaming in front of me. Then the anger came, white-hot and bitter. Not just for what he did, but for the years he'd spent pretending. For the mornings he smiled at me while whispering, "I love you," when it was all performative. For the countless times I had excused the late nights, the secrecy, the emotional distance. Marcus didn't apologize. He just kept repeating, "It's over now. I swear it's done." His eyes begged me to believe him. But I couldn't. Not after seeing the evidence myself. The next few days were unbearable. I watched him act normal, sit across from me at the kitchen table like nothing had happened, and every smile, every word felt like a dagger. I caught him in little slips too. The sudden silence when I walked by, the way he hid his phone under a pillow, the subtle deletion of messages before I could see them. The more I observed, the more I realized this wasn't just a one-time lapse. This had been a pattern, carefully concealed. I tried to confront him calmly, to frame it as a conversation rather than an accusation. I said, "We need to talk about honesty, about trust, about how I can believe anything you say if it's all a lie." He didn't flinch. "I told you. I made mistakes. But it's behind us. I'm here with you now." I laughed, bitterly. "Marcus, 7 years. 7 years and it's behind us? You don't get to decide that alone. Not after everything I've sacrificed, everything I've given." He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in days, maybe weeks. And I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But it was fleeting. Too fleeting. The breaking point came on Thursday night. I had set up a small recording device, not to catch him, but to hear the truth without his filtered words. When the file played, I heard the messages myself. His voice, her laughter, the little secrets shared in the dark. And I realized, painfully, that he didn't even hide it as carefully as he thought. I confronted him again, standing in our living room, the glow from the street lamp casting harsh shadows on his face. "I know the truth, Marcus. Every lie, every late night, every secret text. It's all here. You can't erase it." He said nothing at first. Then, coldly, "You were convenient. That's all. I didn't love you the way you think." It was a gut punch I'll never forget. Not just for the words, but for the clarity they brought. He had never loved me the way I had loved him. He had used me, manipulated my trust, and carried on his secret life as if I would never see it. For the first time, I didn't feel like crying. I felt hollow, empty, like the shell of someone who had believed in something that never existed. And yet, in that emptiness, I began to see something else: freedom. Not the kind that comes from vengeance or from shaming someone, but the kind that comes from realizing you no longer need someone who treated you as optional. I slept in the guest room that night, the cats circling my legs, my phone buzzing with unopened messages. And I decided, quietly but firmly, that I would not beg for his love. Not now, not ever. The next morning, Marcus pretended like nothing had changed. He made coffee, hummed a tune, even tried to kiss me on the cheek, as if we were still just another couple enjoying a quiet weekend. But I felt nothing. No warmth, no love, no nostalgia for what we once were. Just an icy, sharp clarity. I kept replaying his words in my head. You were convenient. I didn't love you the way you think. Every syllable echoed louder than the last. 7 years. 7 years of mornings waking to his side of the bed. 7 years of planning trips we'd never take. Dinners, arguments, laughter, and now nothing. I decided I couldn't continue living in this limbo. I needed a confrontation that wouldn't allow him to twist the truth, a confrontation where I wouldn't let my emotions be weaponized against me. That evening, I asked him to sit with me in the living room. No phones. No distractions. Just him, me, and the truth laid bare. I started with the facts, coldly, methodically. I know about last week. I know about the texts, the calls. I know every time you lied about being late, about where you were. And I don't want excuses. I want the truth. He leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, like a general waiting for my surrender. I already told you. It's over now. I'm with you. No, I said. You're not. You haven't been with me in years. Maybe physically, yes. But emotionally? You've been elsewhere this whole time. And now I understand why. You never loved me the way I loved you. You were convenient, Marcus. That's the truth. His face tightened. You don't get it. You think this is betrayal. You think it's all black and white. But life isn't that simple. I laughed, soft and bitter, shaking my head. It is simple. You chose convenience over honesty. You chose manipulation over love. And I stayed blind because I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe in you. For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the cats in the other room, pawing at the door as if they too felt the tension. And then, quietly, Marcus spoke, but without any warmth. Maybe I loved you once, but not anymore. Not really. You can't make me feel it. That was it. The final line I needed to hear. No apologies, no regrets, no pleas. Just truth, ugly and raw. I felt something inside me break, but it wasn't despair. It was awareness. The illusion had ended. The story I had been living in my head of a happy, loving partnership was gone. And with its collapse came clarity. I didn't need him to validate my worth. I didn't need his love to survive. Over the next few days, I let myself grieve, not for him, but for the life I had imagined, the future that would never exist. I cried in the shower, in the car, in my apartment alone. I let the anger burn, but I also let the emptiness settle. It was uncomfortable, but necessary. I started reclaiming small pieces of myself first. A long walk without checking my phone. Cooking a meal just for me. Turning on the music I loved, not the playlist we had shared. These were tiny rebellions, but they mattered. Each one reminded me that I still existed outside of him. I also confided in a few friends, people I trusted. I didn't ask for pity. I didn't want advice about getting back at him. I simply needed witnesses to my reality, to remind me that my perception wasn't warped by betrayal. And each conversation, each tearful confession, chipped away at the shame he had tried to plant in me. One evening, I found myself standing in front of the bedroom mirror, staring at my reflection. The face looking back was tired, older than 29, but there was something there I hadn't seen in years. Recognition. I recognized strength. I recognized survival. I recognized someone capable of standing alone, without crutches, without illusions. I decided it was time to leave the apartment. I packed the essentials, leaving behind his clothes, his toothbrush, his half-empty coffee mugs. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel hatred. I felt calm, resolved. My dignity intact because I hadn't begged, hadn't pleaded, hadn't allowed myself to be gaslit into believing his lies. I left him a note, brief and cold. I know the truth. I don't need you anymore. Take care of yourself. No explanations. No accusations. Just acknowledgement and finality. Driving away, I felt the weight of 7 years press against my chest. But as the city lights blurred past, a quiet peace settled over me. I realized that betrayal doesn't always destroy you. It can also reveal what you're capable of. I wasn't just someone left behind. I was someone who could survive, who could rebuild, who could define her worth without anyone else's validation. The lesson crystallized slowly, painfully. Trust wisely, love fiercely, but never at the expense of your own dignity. When someone proves they can't honor your heart, the best revenge isn't humiliation or exposure. It's simply walking away, intact, proud, and unbroken. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dread, without pretending, without fear. I didn't need him. I didn't need his approval. I needed only myself. And in that quiet, in that solitude, I finally began to heal. I moved into a small apartment downtown, the kind with exposed brick walls and sunlight streaming through tall windows. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No traces of Marcus, no memories carefully curated to hurt me later. Just me, the cats, and space to breathe. The first few weeks were the hardest. I still expected him to call, to apologize, to explain. But he didn't. And that silence, at first unbearable, became my liberation. I filled it with routines that were only about me. Morning runs along the waterfront, sketching for hours without interruption, cooking meals that made me smile at the flavors I had chosen. I remembered how it felt to exist outside someone else's narrative. Friends checked in. Some asked if I wanted closure, if I wanted him back, if I wanted revenge. I realized I didn't. Revenge, I understood, was an illusion of control. The real power came from reclaiming my life, my choices, my self-respect. One evening, I found myself at a small cafe near my apartment. I was sketching, sipping coffee, and a woman at the next table smiled at me. We struck up a conversation. Nothing romantic, nothing heavy, just two people talking. And for the first time in a long while, I laughed freely. Not the hollow, polite laughter I'd shared with Marcus. Real laughter, light and unguarded. It struck me then how much I had lost, not just to his betrayal, but to the complacency that allowed me to accept less than I deserved. But I also saw how much I had gained. I was capable. I was resilient. I could face my pain without it defining me. I could grieve and still move forward. Weeks turned into months. I developed a rhythm, a life that belonged to me and no one else. And the log, the messages, the betrayal, they became markers of a past that no longer held power over me. I didn't delete them out of malice. I kept them, sometimes glancing at them, a reminder of what I had survived and how far I had come. I didn't seek to punish Marcus. I didn't want to see him falter or hurt. His choices, his truths, were his own burden. My victory wasn't in his downfall. It was in my ascent. I had dignity, unshaken. I had clarity, unblurred. I had myself, entirely and wholly. One night, as I walked the quiet streets, I reflected on the journey. Betrayal had a way of stripping you bare, but it also revealed what you were made of. Some people will use you, lie to you, or discard you. Some will never value what you give freely. And some will, in moments of brutal honesty, show you exactly who they are. The lesson wasn't in getting them to change. The lesson was in learning to stand without them. I stopped, looking at the city skyline, and realized I didn't feel bitterness anymore. Not entirely. There was anger, yes, but it was constructive, fuel for building a life that was mine. I had boundaries now, hard ones, unyielding ones. I had respect for myself, even when I was lonely, even when I felt pain. And I understood this. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing doesn't mean pretending the betrayal never happened. Healing means facing the truth, embracing the pain, and walking forward anyway. Healing is refusing to let someone else's choices define your worth. I had loved deeply, and I had been deceived. But in surviving, I had found strength I never knew I possessed. My heart, once fractured, had room for life again. Not because I had replaced Marcus, but because I had reclaimed myself. I want anyone listening to hear this clearly. Do not let betrayal make you small. Do not let someone's dishonesty convince you that you are unworthy. You are not. Walk away if you must. Stand tall. Protect your heart. And remember, the best kind of justice is living fully, living honestly, and never letting someone else's choices diminish your spirit. Some nights, I still think of Marcus. Not with longing, not with pain, but with acknowledgement. He is part of my story, a chapter that taught me more than I wanted to learn. And that's enough. I survived. I thrived. And one day, I will love again, but on my terms, with someone who values every piece of me. For now, I am content. Because I know my worth. Because I know my boundaries. Because I know that even after betrayal, after heartbreak, after lies, I can stand alone and still be whole. And that, I realized, is the greatest triumph of all.